Hey everybody, this is Chris from Revenge Performance. I'm really kind of frustrated because occasionally we get 6-speed transmissions in where they've been improperly disassembled, and we also get people looking for a part that gets damaged when they get improperly disassembled. I'm going to show you how we do it, and if you find another way, that's great, but this has never caused us to break apart, and so I'd like to share that so that we don't get in units that people have broken, or we don't get requests for this bearing race that breaks all the time because they're extremely rare. We can't get them anymore at all. So basically the only source for more of these is from used units, and obviously you got to scrap a unit to get the bearing, and so we want to keep these on the road as long as possible, and we have to keep how many parts end up getting fabricated from nothing to as low as possible because it's extremely expensive to make small batches of things. So what we have here is a 6-speed input shaft. And this contains gear 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now the 5 speed's different, it just has 3 and 4 on it, but this is from the 6-speed 3000 GT 1994 through 1999 all-wheel drive, or the 94 through 96 Stealth RT Turbo. The problem comes about is some shops will assume that you can press all this off at once here and put that in their press bearing splitter or whatever, press that part, and it tears up the input shaft inside of here because there's a check ball that keeps a thrust bearing for 4th gear from rotating. So we're going to show you how we take these apart. It starts out with taking this snap ring off the end. So what you're going to want are these external snap ring pliers. When you squeeze them, they go external. So you got these 2 little holes. Sometimes these are a little sticky, and you may have to just strike it with a chisel or something similar. You can see that one kind of did it. If it doesn't want to rotate apart like that, you can just strike one corner with a chisel or something. You have your 6-gear thrust. These are just to fit. You can check your end play here by putting a feeler gauge in there. It can be, we've kind of seen all the way from 8/1000ths to 16 to kind of be acceptable. The other thing we got here is this roll pin. You can kind of see some evidence that this has been apart before based on the little kind of way that roll pin's beat up a little bit. That really ought to be replaced, and it will. And we also Loctite that in. But you cannot pull off 6 gear here without taking that out. So what I like to do is just grab a pair of wire cutters, ordinary wire cutters, grip upon that, and just sort of pull it out. And if they get real stubborn sometimes, you can even put like a gear pull or like a slide hammer puller with a threaded screw on it, and you can get them out that way. But mostly I can get them out this way just with a pair of wire cutters. Now you can pull off 6th. And I'm doing this kind of differently than I do in real life. I usually kind of stand these up, but it's a little bit easier to get in the camera shot. So we got here some places to inspect. You want to look at these engagement teeth, and these are actually mint, so that's a good gear. Obviously you want to check the overall gearing here. You can also see someone has previously marked this as 19/1000ths of end play, which is fine. For synchronizers, you want to measure. It's best to replace them, okay? But if you're extremely on a budget or you're in an area where the parts aren't available, you can inspect them. We obviously replace them all, and we also sell them all. So if you need to rebuild your own unit, we have 6 and 5-speed rebuild kits on the website on revengeperformance.com. But basically, to inspect these, you stick a feeler gauge between the synchronizer and the gear, and a healthy gear will be between 40 and 65 thousandths of an inch. If it's a lot less than that, you should definitely replace it. The other thing to look about is a lot of times you get little dimples in these. This is nothing to worry about on this particular Synchro. It'll still get replaced. But if that's got a big dent in it from the synchronizer ball, then that's a problem, and you should replace it because it'll affect your synchronizer timing. 6-gear needle bearing. You want to check these. Make sure the needles are missing. Make sure none of them are pitted or corroded or melted. We've kind of seen everything around here on different occasions. Now you can pull your sleeve off, and there will be balls and springs that fly. You see they kind of rolled away, so just gather those up. Inspect your engagement teeth on these sleeves. This one's fine. You want to check here. This is why we don't do partial rebuilds. I mean, look at the trash in here. If you don't take all your shafts apart, that's going to be in there and getting into your new stuff. So you need to take like a toothbrush and some solvent just to really get all that out of there, and some brake cleaner. So I'm going to gather up my little springs. I like to just put them kind of inside the needle bearing to keep track of those. The balls are pretty common. We sell those, but the springs are a little harder to come by, so try not to lose them. The 3, 4, 5, and 6 are larger. So you can see that right there is bigger than 1 and 2. Okay, so now a problem comes about because you can't just pull this fifth out. It's a press fit. This hub and this bearing sleeve right here are both press fits. So we want to put a bearing splitter underneath 5th gear, which I'm going to do now. We're going to go over to the press. We have a very big press, but for the most part, even a 12-ton can do this job. I recommend if you're going to get something from, say, Harbor Freight, for instance, go ahead and get the 20. It's a sturdier unit, and it'll be able to get more done in the future. So we just have this OTC, I believe it is a 952. Yeah, 952 bearing splitter. But there's other stuff out there. You might be able to find somebody that can rent you one. These are a little pricey. I think they're a few $100s for this. But if you're going to go through your own transmission, it might be worth it. This one's obviously seen a lot of use. So we pull this apart with the adjusting bolts here until it will fit over 5th. Let's see how that works. So we'll go over our shaft, and we'll go over our 5th gear here. Is you want to get underneath this 5th gear here. We're using the flat side of the bearing splitter so it doesn't damage these teeth. When we go up like that, we put this on the press bed, tighten these up. It's not worth the risk of not tightening these up and having it spread apart while you're working with it. And then you can actually damage the teeth on these gears and render an otherwise good gear useless. We can see these engagement teeth are excellent, so this will not need a 5th gear replacement. So it's very wise to take good care of this stuff. You can kind of use any form of tooling you have, but I'm just grabbing a socket I have right here. It ought to be smaller than the inside diameter of this piece. This is an electro-hydraulic press. You don't need anything that's fancy, but just sneak up on it, kind of hit it, push. See, it's coming right through. I'm gonna catch the shaft with my hand. So now we got that shaft out. So now we have the 5th gear assembly here. So I'm just gonna set this to the side. Okay, this is where 5th gear needle bearing. This is where a lot of people mess up. They'll try pressing on the bottom of 3rd gear here, which makes sense. You'd think that'd come up. The problem is there's a check ball inside here, and it will actually groove the shaft and ruin this bearing. So you do not want to do that. So what I'm going to do here is use my bearing splitter. And this is going to seem a little bit risky because we're pushing on some little teeth, but I found it to work 100% reliably. As long as you're careful and you have a sharp bearing splitter and you aren't pressing sideways like you might on a really, really bad press, it's working fine. So that's one other reason I recommend the 20-ton press. It's built a little more rigid. I mean, if you can afford it, get a press that has a ram on it instead of a bottle jack, but I realize that for a hobbyist, that's probably out of the reach for a lot of folks. But this is rigid, and so we're pressing, you know, perfectly parallel with the press bed, and that kind of saves a lot of parts. In this case, I'm going to use the curved side of the bearing splitter. I'm going to go over the shaft, and we're going to grip it right underneath the 4th gear engagement teeth. And yeah, I know those are little teeth. They can stand it. There's a lot of them. The other thing you have going for you is this is not a tight press fit. And the third thing is you're actually getting underneath those teeth further than you think. So you're pressing on them pretty good. So we're going to tighten these up. I like tightening these up before we put it in the press bed because you could obviously just drop this shaft by accident. Once I got this bearing press set up on here, I kind of got a handle. Stick it in the press. We want to confirm our sleeve here is not contacting our press plates. We have press plates that have a very much larger opening when we want to do the second gear. It's a little bit easier, but this works fine for this. We just want to make sure this is centered. And I'll put my socket back. And don't be surprised if this flexes just a little bit. It's okay. Hold on to the shaft. Don't just ram it home. Kind of ease into it. Put a little load on it. And then push. See? Really was barely a push. So here's the check ball we were talking about. If you try to press that all out at once, this will dig into this shaft. And it will explode this bearing here. This will get a big crack in it and it will be ruined, and these are impossible to find new and hard, and I'm keeping all the ones that we have for rebuilds because we do get these in where this will be cracked and somebody just put it back together anyway. It's a really bad thing. You're gonna have vibration and bearing wear, shafts getting out of alignment, all kinds of issues doing that, and I would highly not do that. So the point of this piece, let me just set this down so it's a little bit safer. We're gonna take this to the workbench. The point of this piece is the same thing as the roll pin was. It's to keep this thrust from rotating. So it goes in this hole and it goes in the shaft and keeps it from rotating. Otherwise, your whole piece will just spin. I've seen these without that ball in it, and that's exactly what it'll do. And that can wear out the shaft because the inside diameter of this is not meant to ride on that shaft. So now we can just flip this over, carefully remove the Synchro. This is 4th gear Synchro. This one has more evidence of that ball damage, so you definitely want to replace that because it's going to affect your synchronizer timing. Here's our sleeve. You can see here this sleeve pretty sharpened. This may get replaced. There's a little bit of blunting of these sleeves on the 3rd gear side. When you have a stripe like that, it usually goes outward, and so we'll probably replace this sleeve. Because once those sleeves start to get dull, your shifting gets harder and harder, and you can actually miss a gear too. Okay, now that we got that part, we'll shake the springs out. Now we can press the rest of the shaft apart. For this, and for any situation where I can't... Pulled my back somehow. For this, and for any situation where I can, I use the flat side of the bearing press. Because your contact area on your bearing press is just a ton better than trying to use the curve set. You can see this transmission needs a really good cleaning. It has some wear. This unit has shift fork burned up, and so I suspect that's aluminum we're seeing on everything. Another reason why we will only completely disassemble a transmission here. Okay, so we're good. Grab the shaft, push on this, or your jack. Comes right through. Yeah, so that's really it. If you got a bearing splitter, it's nothing complicated, but if you don't know internally how it's assembled, you don't have the manual or you haven't done them ever before, there's a chance you could try pressing that off all at once and break it. And that's, you know, really what I want to do is save these parts. So I don't want to see somebody get their stuff broken like that because there's just not a lot out there. We try not to keep very many secrets here. What I feel like is if we empower people to fix their own items, you know, that's great. And if they buy stuff from us to do it, that's great too. If they can talk to their shop, tell them some tips and tricks and things that they need to do it right, that's even great too. Or if you realize, hey, there's a lot of detail work involved in all these, I'm just going to send to Adventure Performance and know it's done right. Obviously we prefer that too, but I know that, you know, we can't rebuild every transmission on the earth, and so we just want to help out any way we can, getting revenge on your ride.